On the morning of May 22nd, 1915, nearly 500 soldiers of the 1/7th Royal Scots left Larbert Station for Liverpool, then on to Gallipoli, unaware of the tragedy that lay ahead. They would never reach Liverpool. The worst rail disaster in British history was about to unfold. The loss was unimaginable, felt across the nation, but borne most heavily on the streets of Leith.
This exhibition coincides with and commemorates the 110th anniversary of the Gretna rail disaster. Where we're standing right now is the drill hall in which men from Leith, Portobello and a company's worth from Musselburgh, as well as some from West Lothian, mustered and trained. And the story of the 7th and their involvement in the Gretna rail disaster, which claimed 216 lives, has been told in the course of this exhibition.
The exhibition experience is really all about people. It's not weapons, it's people and the social history. The research room offers the opportunity for people to go and find out more about those who served in the Royal Scots. They may be bringing medals, they may be bringing documents, but there we've got our own researchers. There's the Scottish Genealogical Society, there's National Records Scotland, and there is also an expert in medals.
Technically, you had to be 17 to join. A number undoubtedly slipped through, saying I'm 17, when I think some were probably as low as 15. They'd been waiting since August 1914, and now at last they were going to war.
The men, fresh from Leith, were bound for war, unaware that disaster lay ahead. Just north of Gretna Green, the track should have been clear. Instead, a stationary local train sat directly in their path. There was no warning, no time to stop. The impact was devastating. Wooden carriages shattered, sending soldiers flying through the wreckage. Within seconds, the scene became a tangle of splintered wood, twisted metal, and broken bodies. Then, another horror. A northbound express, unable to stop in time, slammed into the wreckage. Oil lamps and gas fittings ignited. The tangled mass of trains erupted into an inferno. Flames consumed the shattered carriages, and those trapped inside had no way out. In just moments, the calm of the Scottish countryside was replaced with chaos, fire, and unimaginable loss. The worst railway disaster in British history had unfolded in an instant.
We arrived just on the border. I looked out and I said, oh, a lovely morning. And then the next thing was the crash. I landed on my face with a pile of stuff on my back, was hanging to the ground, couldn't move. But where my face was, there was a hole. I could see the light, and I smelled fresh air. Then the next thing was there was a second crash. And it made the hole bigger, but I made an attempt and I got out. I got on my feet and I walked along the line, and it was blazing, and the soldiers was trapped. They couldn't get away. They were caught in the fire. And then my leg gave way and I collapsed.
What did it feel like waking up to know that over 220 of your comrades had died in that crash?
Oh, of course, you see, the point is this, you had no thought for anything like that, you know what I mean? You were just a matter of wondering if you were going to be right yourself.
Well, I think it gives you the context of the battalion as well. So it's not just about the event itself. It also covers what happened to those who survived, who went on to Gallipoli and otherwise. So you get a sense of what a territorial battalion was like, rather than just a whole lot of people who'd been conscripted. How closely connected they were. A few streets around here. The fact this is happening in the very place where widows and mothers came to identify their sons or their husbands' bodies 110 years ago is, I think, quite poignant.
The funeral procession stretched through the streets of Leith for 3 hours. Making its way from the drill hall on Dalmeny Street to the solemn grounds of Rosebank Cemetery.
There wasn't a family untouched by the disaster, and it had always been there in the Leith memory.
My mum's grandfather and 2 uncles were on the train. Quite emotional, really, not just for our family, but for all the families, because one of the things my mum always said to me was that there wouldn't really have been a family in Leith that wasn't affected. And seeing this, was quite emotional to read it, although I know the story.
Our family have always remembered this event. This exhibition is just another part of the history of the crash, which I brought my parents down to see. Still felt very, very keenly, I think, in this part of the city. Certainly my grandparents barely talked about it because it was still quite a sort of trauma for them. My grandfather was 3 years old when his father died. There's always stories. We still get stories this week of people who remember what their grandmother said about it, or some artifact they have in the house, or some piece of local history. So it's still, amazingly, still out there 110 years later.
My father tells the story of they were playing cricket in the late 1930s and a ball hit his hand and some glass came out, and he said, "This must be from the train crash." So I think things like the physical impact and the mental impact of the depression meant that it's something that he carried with him, the burden of that terrible crash throughout his whole life.
50 years after the crash, my father lay dying in a nursing home in Edinburgh, semi-conscious and drugged with morphine. The nurse who looked after him on the night he died told my mother that he had talked and talked of a train crash.
Nowhere did we lose 216 soldiers within 100 miles of their home, having never got to the war they had so valiantly set out to take part in. And that is something which we will always remember.
Well, I think for generations, I think it's important that it is remembered. And so my children always knew the story, and now I've got grandchildren, although they're quite young. They've heard us talk about it, and I will talk to them a little bit more, and I'm going to show them and tell them. Although it's generations before, I do feel quite in touch with the fact that our family were part of this, and it's sad, very sad.